Have things improved in 7 nights after that game-breaking update? Let's analyze everything we have now.
7K Dreamer please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to evaluate in great detail whether things have become better in the game. If you are not even sure what I'm talking about, I have linked a prelude to this video above. Remember I said that maybe after the removal of smart mode and world boss shops, we could get a clearer idea of where things are headed. So if you are truly interested to see how far you can progress, you really should watch this video fully because I will give you lots of reasons and tips. Before we begin, let's go through the essential costs for item upgrading now. An Unawakened plus 0 dragon item would require 1750 stones to become Awaken plus 5 and would need a further 500,000 stones to become an Awaken plus 10 dragon item. An Unawakened plus 0 world boss item would also require 1750 stones to become Awaken plus 5 but would need 175,000 stones to become Awaken plus 10. In this chart, I have also put up the corresponding amounts for raid items and revolutionary items as comparison. Raid items cost a total of 176,750 stones to be awakened and plus 10, while revolutionary items cost a total of only 14,500 stones to become awakened plus 10. All these costs exclude the rank up cost, which lets you change the raid item to a dragon item and a revolutionary item to a world boss item respectively. So now we will look at the availability of power up stones, which I will call PU stones, and how much we can actually get every 2 weeks. Why 2 weeks instead of 1 week? Simply due to the nature of the updates and events, so we can see how much progress you can make in between updates. First will be from the normal daily check-in where you will get 20,000. You will also get 10,000 from weekly quest completion by obtaining 30 items per week. Also, by doing siege defense hard difficulty 3 times a week, you will get 30,000 stones in total across 2 weeks and a further 80,000 maximum depending on your guild's entire effort. So far, this sums up to about 140,000 PU stones in 2 weeks. With the most recent update, they introduced a new material called Awakened Rare Asgard Ore, which is obtainable daily from Nightmare Item Growth Dungeon. Each Awakened Rare Asgard Ore will give you 1000 PU stones when sold, so for 2 weeks worth of Growth Dungeon, you can get 14,000 stones. And since we are talking about Asgard Ores, you get 2 Awakened Asgard Ores from Unknown Area every day, so that's 28 Awakened Asgard Ores in 2 weeks. On top of this, when you clear Siege Defense hard difficulty 3 times alone, you will get 6 Awakened Asgard Ores per week. Weekly season reward gives you 5 as well. So that's another 22 Awakened Asgard Ores in total. Excluding all the random RNG drops from World 13, Castle Rush chests, Guild Dungeon chests, you can confidently get 50 Awakened Asgard Ores in 2 weeks, giving you a further 12,500 PU stones, bringing the total up to 166,250 stones. Another thing would be notice every 2 weeks from your check-in event, you do get one Ash rank raid item selector. If you choose to sell this item, you will get 33,250 stones. And that's now 199,750 stones in 2 weeks just by doing nothing but check-in, auto-clear, selling, and siege defense. Can you hit beyond 200,000 in 2 weeks? For sure! In the recent update, Nightmare Growth Dungeon rewards also got revamped. No more useless E rank items, but now you can get anything between an Awakened D rank, C, B, and A rank item. So even if you are super unlucky and you only get the Awakened D rank item for 14 days, every Awakened D rank item sells to give you 600 PU stones. That's 8,400 more stones for you to hit 208,150 minimum every 2 weeks. Another observation from the past 3 updates is that in every week's special check-in event, the developers give out 20,000 to 30,000 PU stones per week. So this is an additional 40,000 to 60,000 stones depending on the event. Okay, but let's just use 200-ish stones as a basis for 2 weeks. How much can you progress with this? In the PvP aspect, you can get 1 full plus 10 Ash rank item, or you can get 1 plus 7 SS rank dragon item, which means it will take about 5 weeks to get 1 finished top tier weapon. Let's compare it to before. In the past, there was no freaking way you would use stones to get plus 10 dragon items because back then, the only way to get stones without spending was only from siege defense, and you would only get 110,000 stones in 2 weeks, which could only let you power up a plus 5 dragon item to a plus 6. However, remember we could synthesize up to 3 copies of any dragon items monthly, so you could be powering up, for example, a dragon spear and a dragon shield from plus 5 to plus 8. For a fair comparison, right now with the PU stones, you can now make a dragon spear from +5 to +9 within a month. But the biggest difference here is that in the past, you could be upgrading a dragon speed spear, a dragon lethal book, a dragon HP shield and more, all at the same time. So in a month, you can potentially get 3 or more +8 dragon items depending on your goal and materials. But now we only have enough to make 1 +9 dragon item a month. I mean, I hope the developers are seeing this. This is a huge nerf to how much PvP progress a player can make. And what's worse is that if you choose to invest in PvP dragon items with all the PU stones you get, you won't even have any more stones to upgrade PvE items since everything is tied to one currency. Not only is it slower to power up dragon items, another issue is the accessibility of dragon items. Let's not talk about getting them from Item Raid and Mercur's lab, okay? We get one unawakened dragon item from monthly quest completion. Take note, it's monthly. You also can get an awakened dragon item selector from special weekly quests, but this is subjected to event. So far, we have only seen it as a final reward after 2 weeks from Truth's and Orca's quest, which is again 1 month apart. So it seems that every month we can only get 2 dragon item selectors and get 1 up to +9. So if we really want to get dragon items, perhaps we have to start ranking up lower rank items. It would cost a total of 566,750 stones to get a +10 SS rank item from an S rank raid item, which also means it will take about 6 weeks for one copy to be made. Raid items are just slightly more accessible because they come every 2 weeks from daily check-ins and sometimes also in Gaia's gifts and event check-ins. But the opportunity cost is that you will fall short slightly every week because you do not sell them for PU stones. What if you compare this cost to those DCB rank items from Grove Dungeon? Over here, I have an Eileen Spear. If I want to get a +10 Dragon Lethal Spear out of it, it will cost me 599,400 stones, which is actually a little cheaper than if I powered up an unawakened B rank Karma's item. So despite the cost being about 33,000 stones more expensive, it takes about the same duration of 6 weeks. In that case, I don't think at this point players lack the items. Ultimately, we still lack the PU stones to fully make dragon items, and I think this is a very deliberate attempt to slow down the dragon item acquisition. However, with the new changes to the speed calculation in PvP, players basically only need 2 complete dragon speed items for their attack leader for a start. All other heroes will no longer be taken into account for speed and skill priority. So this really reduces the amount of resources needed to put together a PvP team. So what do you give your other heroes? Let's look at the Eileen Spear again. What if you settle for an Ash rank item for the time being instead? The cost is 3 times lower and the substat is merely 1 point less than the SS rank item. Or even look at the A rank Empress item, which actually has exactly the same substat as the Ash rank item, but only a 50 point drop in flat attack stat, and it costs 40 times lesser. I mean, of course it's not the best, but it isn't by any means poor, and you can in fact get an entire team ready for Arena in just 2 weeks if you settle with Emperor items for the time being. And just a small additional tip, start keeping random copies of crit and lethal and block items, as I do believe these substats will have greater importance in the near future. To sum up, for PvP item progression, it is incredibly watered down, and I feel that this is probably to slow down the competitiveness in PvP. So for progressing players, it not only is about the accessories, but also how fast you can build your items. Now let's turn our attention to PvE. Wait, the game has no more PvE. Just kidding. We still have Raid, and Guild Dungeon. And of course, you will still need decent PvE items to tackle them. In most cases, for newer players, only your DPS like Shane, Spina, Taka, Sebastian should have world boss items. In any case, the basic goal of PvE equipment is to have at least 10 times of HP armor, 2 times of counter armor, 2 times lethal physical world boss weapons, to crit magic world boss weapons. Just a recap for the cost of PvE items. For a world boss item, you will need 176,750 stones to make it +10, while a revolutionary item will require 14,500 stones for +10, and a further 194,700 stones to rank up into a world boss item. Just looking at these numbers alone, taking all the sources of PU stones into account, you should be able to get 1 world boss item every 2 weeks. In fact, for new players, you guys have an amazing daily check-in event that gives you 4 revolutionary items. Furthermore, not only can we get 2 per month from Synthesis and 5 per month from the Topaz shop, Item Growth Dungeon drops revolutionary items as well. I feel that it is actually very accessible now. Just look at this random test I did by re-clearing Growth Dungeon 7 times. I actually got 4 revolutionary items from this, and also don't forget, there are a number of Gaia gifts on heroes like Sebastian, Chloe and Sylvia who do give you revolutionary items. Remember I made the video on fast PVE progress? Back then Siege Defense was the only source of stones and you could only get 55,000 stones weekly. I calculated and I said that you could get about 3 to 4 plus 10 revolutionary items per week. Currently, assuming you get 100 stones per week, you can build up to 6 to 7 plus 10 revolutionary items per week. This is especially important in terms of PVE, HP, armor and DPS weapons. Any player will get a much faster progress in terms of PVE equipment building. Now, we just need PVE mods to use them in. So it's pretty interesting how things have turned out in just 6 weeks. We do get a lot more PU stones now, but relying on one single resource would still mean that players would have to prioritize certain items and modes. So I hope you found this video useful. Do give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much and I'll see you guys very soon.